Good morning. This clip will be looking at the 3 sections of the English language exam and how to approach each one. Okay, starting with section A, short answer. So this is the shortest section of the 3. It's only worth 15 marks and you should only spend about 15 to 20 minutes of it out of your 2 hours, excluding your extra 15 minutes of reading time. So basically in short answer, they're testing your meta language especially. So here they're not looking for lengthy writing, they're not looking for really fancy writing or bringing in extra ideas about English language, they're just testing your meta language. So in terms of your writing, always count the marks and be extremely obvious or extremely explicit about how you state things. So if a question is worth 2 marks, it'll be worth 2 pieces of meta language or 1 piece of meta language and an explanation. Typically, questions link to things. So this one up top, question 1 in the example, just asks you to identify something. So here you would just write the answer to the question, just identify the register. You wouldn't explain anything. Whereas down here, this one is worth 2 marks, they're asking you to link a piece of meta language to one of the major topics. So register, social purpose, and context are like common things they can ask you to link to. But they could also do things like information flow or topic management, etc. So they're asking you to link 2 things here. So always count the marks. Seeing with this one, they're asking you for 2 examples of the meta language, or 2 examples of the language feature, and they would both require explanation. So this one, you'll obviously only be getting 1 mark per mark in explanation, but if this one were the same question worth 4 marks, you would be getting 1 for each meta language and 1 for each explanation. Okay, moving on to the analytical commentary now, section B, which is worth 30 marks out of a total of 75, and this would take normally 45 to 50 minutes. So this is equal with the essay in terms of how long you'd spend on it. This is just a suggestion, by the way. Typically, you would take still a little bit of time here to work on your essay, which takes a little bit more time. But basically, the analytical commentary is like a self-directed short answer. So a self-directed version of part A. It just means that you're being required to find all of the details, all of the meta language yourself and synthesize it however you see fit. So typically, it focuses on the interactions between register, social purpose, and context. So how formal something is, whether it's written or spoken, why the text exists, which is your social purposes, and the context, both cultural and situational context. So typical types of text will be like it'll either be written or spoken, and it'll either be formal or informal. So a speech, typical formal spoken, everything to a fine, which is a written formal. You can also get written informals and spoken informals. And your analytical commentary will be based around trying to explain why the features in the text replicate that formality, the mode, and also the social purposes and context. So again here, this is not an essay, so your writing should be pretty direct. Unlike the essay, you won't have a lengthy introduction, you definitely won't have a lengthy conclusion, and you won't bring in any of your own ideas. You'll just be writing really explicitly about identifying things and explaining how they exist and how they function and how they interact, but you won't be required to bring in new ideas or quotes or anything like that. The analytical commentary should be very explicit. It should be more like the writing style of a short answer than that of section C, the essay. So moving on to that, section C, the essay, this is also worth 30 marks out of 75, so it would also take around 45 to 50 minutes of your time, and it's quite likely that you would be stealing time from the analytical commentary, as well as the short answer, which we aim to be able to do it in 15 minutes, even though it's worth a little bit more marks than that. We aim to be able to do the short answer really quickly so that we can spend our time here on the essay. Here the essay, the meta language again is key, but here you have to bring it in completely by yourself, so you don't have any source material. Section 1 and 2 will have a source text, so you'll be given a transcript. Here you have no transcript like that. You'll be given 2 to 4 prompts, so optional, so that one of them you have to do a topic, and they'll all have like a couple examples of things you could bring in. But essentially, you'll be given 2 to 4 options to write about, and you have to pick one and write a lengthy essay about it. Some of the essay types that you can get, and they generally come in like genres, they generally come in groups. Some of the really common ones are modes, so talking about how spoken versus written versus signed modes affect language. A common one is also standard Australian English, so how the standard is treated in Australia. The whole concept of standard Australian English is essentially how it contrasts with certain ethnolects and idiolect. Language and inclusion, so here we talk about things like language and identity, especially. And a really common up-and-coming topic is language and technology, so especially questions like how is the internet affecting language, and another common one is offensive language, so how does language offend some people, and how do we manage that in society, and should language censorship be be relevant in Australia. So with the essay, you're really going to prepare by collecting meta-language examples, collecting news examples, so media examples, which must be from Australia from this year, and you'll be bringing those into your essay to show how to answer the question really thoroughly. You'll be bringing examples that are relevant and up to date into your discussion. With the essay, it's one of the areas you can prepare for the most, because there's going to be 2 to 4 topics, and there's only a few types of topics that can come. There's a couple more than just these 5, but I wouldn't say there's more than 10 possible topics, right? And the topics, if it's a standard Australian English one, it'll be a pretty common and repetitive one that you'll see if you look at past examples. So it's fairly easy to prepare for this. If you study 3 to 4 of the potential topics, you're almost guaranteed to get one that comes your way that you enjoy, and that you know how to write about. So the essay is also where you want to start bringing your more in-depth discussions in, especially about identity. So the Australian cultural context here is really important. You don't get a chance to talk much about Unit 4, identity, and any of those kind of things in sections B or A. Sometimes there's a small question about it, like in the 2018 exam, there was a small question about identity in Part A, but the largest discussion of this will come up in the essay. So here's where you want to really show your deeper understanding for English, where the meta-language just kind of proves your points, but your underlying analysis of how English language works in Australia is what we're trying to develop here. So just remember that each of these sections has kind of their own writing style. Here we are very, very direct in section A. Here we are pretty explicit, but with a little bit more explanation. And here we are showing our more analytical, our more in-depth analysis writing style, bringing in our own examples and stuff. Thank you for listening today.